Hello everybody, and welcome to the new Mindscape. In this series of videos, we'll be talking about spirituality and the body. As we've been discussing in previous videos, our mindscape is populated by all sorts of objects of consciousness. Now, how are all of these objects of consciousness linked together and activated? So I've used the metaphor of an operating system to describe how our mindscape is organized and operated. In many ways, culture can be likened to an operating system, which not only organizes and activates our objects of consciousness, but also generates objects of consciousness and implants them into our minds. We all have at least one mental operating system, and often more than one. Cultures, ideologies, religions, and specialized systems of knowledge are all mental operating systems. Worldviews and value systems are all mental operating systems. Our mind can't function without an operating system. Our shared operating system with members of our society allows us to perceive the same things, to build a common understanding, and to coordinate our actions. But of course, there are limits to the notion of an operating system as an analogy or a metaphor. We don't simply download a ready-made operating system into a blank mind. So we do, through education, absorb a fully functional operating system, but we also actively participate in interpreting them, modifying them, and transmitting them to others. But I still think it's interesting to think about culture and religion in terms of an operating system. Now, cultural and religious operating systems categorize our objects of consciousness into different categories, and they induce us to perceive and to respond to different classes of objects differently. This basic categorization is called an ontology. The word ontology sounds like a very abstruse philosophical concept, but it actually refers to a simple question. What are the basic components of reality, and how are they connected together? So, at the core of any operating system is a specific ontology. We can find many different types of ontologies in different cultures and religions. And philosophers explore the nuances and implications of ontologies in very much detail. Here, I don't want to get into hair-splitting metaphorical discussions, but I do want to look at different ways in which we can classify different ontologies. And one important distinction is between dualistic ontologies, on the one hand, and holistic or monistic ontologies on the other. In a dualistic ontology, reality is composed of two radically different and irreconcilable elements. So, for example, mind versus matter, or good versus evil. In a monistic or holistic ontology, on the other hand, there's ultimately one underlying reality, and reality thus forms a single whole. Even though a lot of so-called holistic ontologies recognize that there are different parts, but these parts are seen as being deeply interconnected. So there can be duality without dualism. So to illustrate the difference between these ontologies, I want to talk about some of the examples that we've discussed in some of the previous videos. Modern society is dominated, or in a sense, the operating system of modern society is dominated by a dualistic ontology, and it's often called materialist. So it's materialistic dualism, or dualistic materialism. And it sees the world as being divided into basically two categories of beings. There's the world, on the one hand, there's the world of material nature, which operates according to universal, objective, impersonal laws that operate independently of humans and that are knowable to humans. And on the other side, there's the world of human consciousness and subjectivity, which is unique to each individual and which can't be objectively known. And overlaying this distinction, or kind of parallel to this distinction, is the mind-body dualism. So on the one hand, on the side of matter, we have material bodies just like non-human beings. Our bodies are part of the material world of nature, and our bodies follow the laws of nature. And on the other hand, we also have interiority and subjectivity of our mind. We have minds that are subjective, and so in that sense we're radically different, not only from the world of nature, but we're also all different from each other, since we all have different subjectivities. In this dualistic materialist ontology, interiority, subjectivity, and the mind are mere reflections or expressions of the material world. So the highest value is given to material existence, survival, and wealth. On the other hand, this can be inverted. So like a romantic poet, we might invert this materialistic dualism and accord higher value to the inner life of the mind, the emotions, and the imagination. According to the dualistic ontology, the world is divided into two: the world of objective matter, which is common to all beings, and the world of subjective consciousness, which exists only in humans. In other words, the universe is also divided into two types of beings. On the one hand, non-humans, who follow the laws of material nature, and humans, who are divided into material nature, which is the body, and the subjective mind. If you meet a non-human, it has its external appearances, it has its shape, color, or structure, but it has no mind or subjectivity. It doesn't have any consciousness, and it only exists as an external thing. That is the world of nature in the dualist ontology. Nature doesn't think or doesn't have consciousness or the ability to communicate. If we think non-humans have emotions or consciousness, or if we feel a deep connection to non-human worlds, this is nothing more than a subjective belief, since there's no way to prove it. So a few weeks ago, when we experimented with the idea of removing meanings from things, just like what Sartre and Camus did, we touched on the core of dualistic materialism, that any meanings in the world actually come from us. Only humans create meanings and significances, because only the human has consciousness, subjectivity, and interiority. We may think that nature, plants, and animals are beautiful, but that's just our own opinion, our subjective judgment. We may want to protect animals or make our gardens beautiful, but these notions also just come from us. They don't come from them. The animals or the plants don't know if they're beautiful or ugly, and they don't even care. Beauty and ugliness are only human judgments. Animals, plants, or the universe have nothing to say about it. They just have pure existence. And humans simply have subjective feelings about them. That's it. This is the basis of the materialist, dualist operating system.